Good afternoon and welcome to TalkSports. It is our weekend program, Saturday Sports Special to be exact. And well, as indicated, well, before I go into that, well, obviously it's a very whole wintry weekend here in North America. I guess as much my co-host Rudian will probably be on the same page with me, unlike our guest, just Mr. Brian Lewis, who is probably in a sunny, warm Trinidad and Tobago. Well, as this weekend, no doubt, as I said, that we are joined by Mr. Brian Lewis, distinguished sports leader and administrator. I'm saying that. I don't like the former thing, because he's still involved somewhere or the other. Well, I have to put in something in that he's a former president of the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees, CANOC. Well, you recall he has been on our programs a couple of times as the president and then the former president. And he's also the immediate past president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. Mr. Lewis, well, he recently made a very personal and courageous public announcement about his prostate cancer diagnosis and his decision to turn that experience into advocacy through his pledge to walk for athletes. Well, we thank him for joining us to share his story, his perspective, and his continued commitment to sports and athletes across the region. Let me welcome Mr. Brian Lewis, live from Trinidad and Tobago. A warm welcome to you, I should say, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you very much, and my good friend there, smiling as always.
Really.
Yes, man, a pleasure to have you. You in the warm Trinidad, and we are out here in the freezing temperature that that outside is colder than a fridge. So that's what we are dealing with on our side.
Oh, I keep forgetting how to word. That's a choice, right?
That's the price.
Yeah. Yep. Let me just say, I think this is the first time. I mean, we are already deep into 2026, but Happy New Year to you and all of you. All the best for 2026.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you too, and same to you and your family and your loved ones.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Yeah. So, Mr. Lewis, first of all, as again, thank you for joining us, as I indicated. And how are you feeling today, physically, mentally, and emotionally? That's probably just as an icebreaker, I should say.
Good. In full-on warrior mood, fighting forward, and it's a constant daily saying. In the circumstances is what it is, and it's always. Everybody has an individual and a unique perspective and experience, but no matter how good or how positive the things may seem physically, it's always a daily mental and emotional and psychological challenge in terms of not allowing anxiety and fear to take over.
Yeah. And while we're on that, before we go into, sort of deeper, heavier topics, what has sport meant to you personally over the years? I mean, you have been very much involved in sports, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but also the region. And then you have led some campaigns, I will say, that took on some extra wings internationally. Some of them having to do with more accountability and transparency in sports and things like that. So, but beyond titles and leadership roles, what sports meant to you personally over the years?
You mean what sports?
Yeah.
Well, I believe that sport plays an integral role in the lives of youth and young people. I've always said that even from my own personal experience, growing up single parent in Trinidad and Tobago, not privileged, not being privileged, being single parent in any part of the world and in the Caribbean is just what it is. I'm the eldest of children. And, my mother didn't have it easy. So sport for me growing up in the period that I grew up in, as a child of the 50s, no different to Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali and Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, and all these figures, Nelson Mandela. And here the kind of evidence in the Caribbean, Walter Rodney, Fidel Castro, and all that was happening in the Caribbean, Daga, Stokely Carmichael. Sport was a central part of our existence growing up in the area or the community, whatever you choose to call it. I grew up in. In fact, sports culture, steel pan, calypso.
Yeah.
So that sport for me, I've always said, became a surrogate father. Sport gave me a sense of discipline and self-esteem when I needed it most. And I saw young men, primarily in those days, use sports to make a better life for them. And I simply made a decision that I would make my contribution to pay it forward and to the betterment of the society through sport rather than other activities like the Lions. Not that I'm saying the Lions, those are good activities, Lions, the Lodge, etc. I choose sport, and I have seen sport communicate to at-risk youths in particular and make a huge difference. I've seen where when the opportunity for sport, sometimes more than education, is taken away from at-risk youths and young people on the whole, it causes them to fall between the gap. Now, I know based on how we were the colonialization of our societies with the imperialists, where education was used and religion was used to brainwash us and our ancestors away from our own thing. We made education the be all and end all, and that's all right, but it didn't. The society as constructed post colonialism did not embrace the fact that there are multiple intelligences, and not all of us were born to be doctors and lawyers and captains of industry, as we have now seen years later. Some of us were gifted, like Bob Marley and a number of others, Sparrow, Kitchener. You could go through the whole list. And sport. So you look at the history of sport in the Caribbean, and you realize, and I've learned a long time, that sport is not an expenditure or a cost item. It's an investment in the human capital of our societies. And yeah.
Yeah, you recently chose to go public with your prostate cancer diagnosis. What led you to make that decision, Mr. Lewis?
I wouldn't say something led me. It evolved. In the early stages of my diagnosis, my wife and adult children agreed that going public would be, the family needed time to, with all the distractions, to come to terms with the diagnosis and the treatment options and all of the important decisions. And in fact, that proved wise, because the mental and emotional strain of of processing and coping and making all the decisions, notwithstanding the fact that there were different opinions on the table, was debilitating. So that proved why. And then what happened? I've always been following Sir Chris Hoy, the
Cyclists
multiple Olympian legendary cyclist from
in the
UK,
UK, right?
who was diagnosed a couple of years ago, some time ago, with terminal prostate cancer. And I saw how he embraced the challenge and he refused to allow the diagnosis to define him. And then recently, Shaka Hislop, who I consider a very good friend,
Right.
came out publicly. And then there's another good, somebody I know very well, a well-known public figure who in Trinidad and Tobago, but more in fashion, who came out, and his situation is more dire than a number of people, and he was open with it. And in a couple of conversations with Shaka in particular, and others, there is this stigma about male cancer, just not only prostate, but testicular. And that there is a silence because of the way we in particular, both you gentlemen too, we have been socialized in the Caribbean to, in terms of our ego and our virility and our masculinity and the machismo culture and how we identify ourselves as men. And there is this silence. And in addition to this silence, there is this stigma where too many, in particular Afro-Caribbean men, and the statistics will bear this out, that Afro-Caribbean, we dealing with the Caribbean men, are at a higher risk for a number of reasons, and that in fact, World Health Organization, PAHO, CAPA, research will show that Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad and Tobago, in particular, have some of the highest prostate cancer mortality rates in the world. And because of the stigma attached and the way we've been socialized, this machismo culture, we Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean men who are high risk because of our research seems to suggest our ethnicity of getting prostate cancer and dying from prostate cancer because of our reluctance to be screened, to do the PSA, to do the digital rectal examination, and the potential markers that could point to early detection. And the huge challenge is that prostate cancer does not provide symptoms in the early years. So what invariably happens and what causes the high mortality and morbidity rate in the Caribbean, amongst Afro-Caribbean men in particular, is the fact that by the time we get the symptoms and go to the doctors, it's already late stage. And then it becomes significantly more challenging and more difficult to manage, with the consequences of the cost to families and the self and the communities and the health. In fact, the public health experts have deemed prostate cancer and the high incidence of prostate cancer a public health concern in the Caribbean. So I was saying all that to say that it kind of evolved, and I would say I was encouraged, if there's a word or whatever word you choose to use, by Shaka Hislop coming. And then when I did make it public, it came out in an interview with Andrea Batista on 995 FM. I got a lot of responses from around the world, saying that it was a good thing, it was to use and brave. I even had a reach out from the Trinidad and Tobago Cancer Society, who also came with a team and participated in the marathon challenge. I got offers from outside of the Caribbean to be part of, in fact, in Africa, an African country, to be part of a awareness campaign for prostate cancer and the calling and the need and advocating for early screening, which leads to early detection. And in fact, I got a couple of calls from people, male, telling me that, from all ages, from 40 upwards, telling me that they will go and get screened because they were reluctant to do it for the very same reasons I would have articulated. Because it's no secret that, one of the complications of prostate cancer, if it gets to a particular stage and along the journey, is urinary complications, erectile dysfunction, etc. Because if you Google prostate cancer on Google University, as I call it, you will get an idea. Not everything on Google is accurate, but you will get an understanding of why it's such a big cloud over male men, and in this case in particular in the Caribbean.
Right, because for many men, health challenges are basically kept private, as you indicated, and you saw it important to speak openly about it, and sort of a message you sending to most people, that taken from your announcement, and you use the example of the.
I'll also use Shaka too, because he's a huge.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Shaka,
in the Caribbean and the world.
Right, Shaka Hislop is one, and then so
Chris Roy too.
Right, but and what is also interesting is that you took quite a while to make that announcement, Mr. Lewis. You said,
as I said earlier, may I interject?
You and your wife
took a family consultation on it, and I have to respect the family. So, as far as from my perspective and my family's perspective, we didn't take a while. The announcement or me coming public with it came when it was necessary, when it was time to go public.
When you believe it was
time. The public may not appreciate that, but at the end of the day, my first concern and loyalty in dealing with the diagnosis was to my loved ones.
Right. So during that period of the diagnosis and the public announcement that you made, what it was like for you, Mr. Lewis, balancing all of that, keeping it that private and going about a way of life to ensure that, everything is okay with you?
Well, in fact, the diagnosis came on top of the death of my beloved younger brother suddenly on the 26th of April. So
That's was 2025?
Huh?
Of the year 2025, right?
Yeah, the year 2025. Yeah. And then came the diagnosis. But the truth be told is that I wasn't feeling well. So for months, I had kind of gone radio silence, as it's called. Um, wasn't really attending meeting because I just wasn't feeling well. Um, you know, I was going through all the various tests to arrive at options on how best to move forward. So it I was more, and with the advice of the doctors and family, I was more focused on the path to recovery. Let's call it that way. I had to change my diet. At times there were medication, but I had to make some lifestyle choices in terms of strengthening my immune system, so that I really wasn't out and about much. I mean, fortunately, I was still able to write because technology, attend some virtual meetings. So what I'm saying is that it I had to deal with it. Everybody who's diagnosed with cancer will have their own story about when you're sitting down in the doctor's office and the doctor, he or she, says, well, the news is not good. And this is what it is. Everybody will have their own stories of how that would have landed. That my doctor would have said, all cancers are like earthquakes to the body. Yeah, people will say, well, hey, as a matter of fact, someone did tell me that, and I found it was so, well, I guess they were told it was intentional. It was well intentioned, but it came across very insensitive. But I bit my tongue. They said to me, well, cancer, prostate cancer is a good cancer to have. And I remember counting to 10, to 100, and then calmly saying, well, I don't think any cancer is a good cancer to have. Anyway, back to what my doctor said. My doctor said, so before that person said that, I'm saying this is what in the process in the month. And I remember the specialist saying, cancer, people don't understand. Cancer is like being in a war with an enemy that have one intention and one intention alone, and that is to kill you. Some people may say, why doctor say that? But the doctor was just trying to put it in the context that this is an enemy that you need to be, just as how you'd approach preparing for an event, a sporting event, you have to be prepared. You have to be disciplined. There are options. There are things you must do. Understand the brutality of the enemy you are facing.
Let me just, before I bring in Rudy and yeah. Happy New Year, Mr. Lewis. Thanks for blessing us with your presence from Garden Julian. And Lincoln Toro Deputy said, prostate cancer affects people of African heritage disproportionately more than other racial groups. There is an organization in Canada dedicated to helping and supporting Black folks dealing with prostate issues. It's called the Walnut Foundation. Grenadian Simon Samuel is a founder and vice president of the Walnut Foundation. And he says, well, jokingly, he says, all the best to Brian, a great guy who, like me, holds Uncle Jack Warner in high regards. He's just showing.
And, there's also a non-profit organization in the UK called Orchid. You can check it out. But that raises a very interesting point, right? In that, what is the organization in the Caribbean that deals with prostate cancer.
Is there?
I am asking you. I just said, what is the organization?
Yeah, that's true. Rhetorically.
Maybe it's not a rhetorical question as the person put that, right?
Yeah.
Again, if you do the research, you see there are groups dealing with cervical. That's the pronunciation, cervical.
Yeah, for the women. Yeah, yeah.
Right, breast
Yeah.
cancer.
Yeah.
But the one that lands in men's ego, the virility, the little man. Yeah.
And I wonder if it's why you say so many men are, it's like a taboo. And so many men are basically afraid to come out.
Michael, I mean, come, if I could come in and listen, come to man.
The Rudyard.
No, I mean, all right, I know you're trying to, hey, listen, from, people don't like to hear this. You go back in the DNA and the ancestors. You look at the stereotypical Caribbean male, right? Everything revolves around our ability to perform, our virility, right? Again, I know, may have certain meeting, but hey, frank talk is important talk. I mean, I've heard colleagues, friends say, family members, especially old school ones, they prefer to die hard than live soft. And this is because if you don't accept who you are, then where we going, right? So the mere idea, I mean, excuse me, right? I mean, we're big people here, right? We essentially, regardless of however you end up making your choices, and I have no issue with that, but we grew up essentially in a homophobic kind of culture, right? So I remember for years telling my doctor, Doc, because I'm mixed, right? So he used to tell me, hey, there's a thing, I have a family history. But I always believed I keep myself relatively healthy. I exercise. I'm vegetarian, leaning towards vegan. So, and I tell myself, well, So I was really, to be honest with you, I was surprised. Maybe I should not have been. Maybe I was delusional, given family history, the fact that, for years my doctor said, well, remember you're Afro, Asian, Trinidad mix, and so we're sure in addition to that, yeah. But for years, I told my doctor, my primary care doctor, Doc, gosh, Doc, you do the PSA, right? And he said, yeah, no problem. Because the mere idea of the digital rectal examination frees me, you know what I mean? The mere idea of being violated, and a little light-hearted aspect of it, without getting the specific. I always remember my wife, will be 40 years, God spares this year. She deserves a medal. She always used to be very unsympathetic. She used to say, I don't know how much all the men, we women go through this every year for our pap smear. So what's the issue, right? And I'm telling you, for years, until the PSA started showing some signs, and they said, hey, you have no choice, because of where this PSA is, right? And I mean, it has so much funny stories I could give you about this rectal examination.
Yeah, it's like, as Torres is saying, Lincoln is saying, prostate cancer was diagnosed in the old days in the West Indies as stoppage of water, So it was all this sort of, sort of a taboo.
Right. And as I said, the downside, right? I mean, the downside. And the doctors tend to be very, well, if you have a good doctor, very transparent. Yeah. These are the options. If you do this and you do this, this is what will happen, right? So, as I said, for most Afro-Caribbean men, give them a choice. As I said, the amount, and you know it, you go and ask, the amount of Caribbean men, so I'm saying that the surveys with CAPA WHO will show that the reality for Afro-Caribbean men. So I'm not saying that a racist thing, I'm just saying is that you ask, the amount of men will tell you, I prefer not to know. I'd die anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the results and the tests and the mortality and mobility rate shows that. So let me not dance around that in rooms of Whitwell. The reality is that we need to break the silence.
Yeah.
We need more men who have been diagnosed with the disease, that's what it is, to stand up and say, listen, screening and early detection creates a manageable situation, possibility of less invasive treatment plans that could maintain a quality of life. Or, like I had a prominent person in Trinidad, Chris, I wouldn't call his name, but a prominent person, you could Google it. And he testified recently that he had been going to all these different doctors, and they were telling him that he had osteoarthritis. And I think it was only when he went to Becquia, I think, with the same back pain and stuff, he was diagnosed as 4th stage prostate cancer that had spread to his spinal cord. And he was now in the process, I think, of palliative care. You know what that means, right?
Yeah.
But again, whether you say misdiagnosis or whatever, it what it is, late stage diagnosis. Awareness is important. Knowledge is important. Information is important. We need to put aside the stigma and the self-diagnosis and the fear and the anxiety and screen. Men, we need to screen. Michael, if you haven't been, you need to go and screen. Boy, you need to go and screen. Once you reach...
No, it's 45, 40. Yeah.
If you don't have a family history, you are of Afro-Caribbean descendant, you need to screen. In the early stages, there is no symptoms of such. Yeah. The screening will assist. And even with the screening, there is controversy with regard to the PSA. I was on a program recently with a doctor from the Trinidad and Tobago Cancer Society, and I did some reading up on it, and he said the controversy was caused by the developed world, where they have done their tests. I don't want to use the C word, the Caucasian word, and they have come up with this view about the PSA, but in the Caribbean, that there is a different experience in terms of the importance of the PSA in early diagnosis, early detection, sorry. And therefore, you'll find in the Caribbean, the doctors tend to rely on the PSA as an important part of the screening. But all these things need to be openly discussed, because as my specialist had said to me in the early, he said, Brian, you have to be very careful. He said, because of Google University, we're talking about in the Trinidad and Tobago context, you will get 1.4 million experts on prostate cancer.
Yeah.
And you will get a number of people who will share with you with well-intention their experience. But technology and modern research, there are different treatment options.
Yeah.
There is the interactive option where there is also something called precision oncology. There is this school of thought that use a balance between conventional cancer treatment, which is the triad of, in the case of prostate, radical prostatectomy, radiation, chemo.
Yeah.
And then there is a school that says, especially if it is detected early, you could dietary modifications. So one of the things I would have learned and had to make an adjustment based on my treatment plan is that cancer thrives on sugar and glucose and those things. So part of my treatment plan calls for a reduction in carbohydrates, something similar-ish to the keto plan, right? Now, for a vegetarian like myself, who love ground provision and fruits, and who believe they exercise and they need the carbohydrates, that may not have been in my best interest. I've had to make that modification. It hasn't been easy. A lot of greens, a lot of vegetables. I am somebody who, for the last 50-something years, I've grown into the habit over time of 4 hours sleep, as most people who interact with me know, in terms of messages and communication. Now I am on a plan where I have to get 8 hours sleep. All that is aimed at strengthening my immune system. You know, and also, as the doctors say, avoid what they call here in Trinidad and Caribbean, bacchanal, toxic situations and people and stress. So I have had in the since last year been said no to a lot of things I would have said here.
But not really, but not no to a lot of things in sports per se, but because sometimes the hustle and bustle in sports sometimes become a bit
I want people like to come out of some of the WhatsApp groups, but I don't even read the messages.
Okay.
Because that is it. I've had to avoid things, that stress and all that contributes. And anyway, I could go on, but the point I'm trying to make to my friends, the knowledge and the importance, because yes, maybe I'm kind of like that, right? So I went into a deep dive because I believe knowledge is power. I read, that's why I'm preparing for a medical exam. I read everything possible, technical and otherwise, about cancer and prostate cancer in particular, male cancers, and all the different tests.
Before I bring on Rudian, Gordon says, thanks for your advocacy for early detection by preventative care and should be encouraged and not belittled. Very much appreciated for not remaining silent. Rudian?
Yes, certainly, man. Mr. Lewis, I certainly thank you for coming out, because many people do listen, especially as men. I always have a problem in the Caribbean for years now. When I get to the stage of understanding more on the medical concept of, there is no push for men health in the Caribbean, and I always talk to my nurses friends about that, and I always stick with Grenada and specifically that men don't go to see a doctor until they're sick. They don't go and do a full checkup. And I'm not talking about everybody. That goes for myself too. Sometimes you're doing so much, you forget. You have to get a checkup. You forget that a year will pass, 2 years will pass, and then that will be gone. So it's not only on that. You also come with dental as well too, and the same thing, because they say the gum is the closest thing to the heart. So if you have bad teeth, then that create heart attack. And so there's a lot of these things that's happening to us as men in the Caribbean that we don't realize. Not getting checkup is something that is key. I always say that this is the push I want for men, especially in the Caribbean, to see more of that happening. Not necessarily, not only on the cancer part of it, but just a whole holistic checkup. In a whole, men get checkup. We grew up, we're saying that men don't cry. We hear those things in them, and that kind of tie into this old folks kind of mentality that we grew up with, and it's falling down to the generation to come. So we don't see a lot of these things, but the checking up is very important, that you need to get screened. These are very important things for us because, like I said, I study says that, the West Indian man, is high possibility of prostate cancer. That's what the study says, So certainly we try our best to do what we can do, but there's a fear in men going and get that check. There's a fear in them, for one, the privacy, one, and two, they feel that I don't need to get checked. I'm good. I'm fine. I don't feel nothing. And I think that's where the problem is, where they think that I don't feel nothing on the outside, so why do I need to go check up something? One of the things that a lot of people look at COVID in a negative, but I see it as a positive, because a lot of people didn't realize they had underlying conditions. Many people walking every day had underlying conditions. So a lot of people who die, and they say, they die because they take the COVID, they take the vaccine, and the vaccine killed them, because you had underlying conditions. So a lot of times people don't know that, because why? They don't get checked. They don't go to the doctor. They don't get a checkup. They don't do all these things and listen to the doctor. And even if they do go and doctors prescribe something to them or tell them they need to go and do this, that don't happen. So certainly, man, I appreciate the fact that you're coming out and you're speaking positive towards it. And I really do hope that this message, Bascom, could really spread across social media, that we as men could really get this deep into us to understand that we need to get checked. We need to get the screening. It costs us nothing. It's better to know than don't know, because, like you said, when you do know, it's too late. In the sense where there's things that can be done. Things can be done in the early stage. It is harder in the late stage. But in the early stage, it can be managed, and we have to get that, and they have to understand that, because that is a serious disease for across the globe, and not only in men but in women. Cancer is a serious thing, because the minute we hear it, the first thing we think in our head is death, but we don't think that there's process, and there's ways, and there's ways that you could live longer, certainly. So yeah.
Thanks, Rudy. So Louis, here is a question for you on the monitor. Does Brian care to share what level was his PSA? A friend told me last week that he has a PSA of 7 and has some issues passing water. What he said is taking Flomax and wouldn't recommend surgery. He said the doctor told him he would die from the disease, but something else. But
well, I will not. What I would advise is speak with your medical team.
Yeah.
Everybody's circumstances are different, and it will be highly. I wouldn't want to make a medical recommendation. I would strongly advise that discuss with your medical team, get a second opinion if that makes you, that is usually advisable. And in some cases, a third opinion. I would also recommend that if you don't have an oncologist as part of your team, that you have a consultation with an oncologist. In abroad, that's almost a requirement, because I had gone to the US, because I have my sister lives in the States and my brother in Canada. And their treatment pathways move different. In the Caribbean, sometimes you have your GP or your primary physician, and then you go, he or she recommends you to if it's prostate cancer, a urologist, and that's sometimes where it circulates, right? But an oncologist is an important part of the decision-making process because an oncologist is a specialist in cancer. So the surgeon may have done a number of things in terms of urology. It's related to prostate and the urinary tract, you have cardio, whatever. But so to answer that question, I would recommend that your medical team, and if for some reason you don't have confidence or trust in your medical team, then you get a second and third opinion. It's very important. I have found in my case that trust in your medical team is important, especially when there are different opinions on the table. And for me, aside from family support, for me, it may not be everybody's cup of tea, but you also have to have a consultation with God, if that's what you call it, and ask God for guidance in making whatever decision you need to be made. And always remember, regardless of how strong and fervent you pray, it's not our will, but God's will be done.
Yep. So true.
You have pledged to, as they say, to work for athletes. What does this initiative represent to you? And I say work for athletes because initially I had run for athletes, right? But you said, "Oh, I'm not walking."
I'm not able to run. That's the downside of playing a contact sport like rugby for years.
Right.
The initiative, as it started in December 2014, while I was president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. The initiative was called at that time 10 Goals by 2024 Athlete Welfare and Preparation Fund. And the idea was we entered, a group of us entered the Trinidad and Tobago International Marathon in January 2015. Walk. No runners, walk. They had runners, but walk. And that has continued over the years, the last 12 years. This year was the 12th. The 10 Goal 2024 Athlete Welfare and Preparation Fund has transitioned legally into a legal foundation called the TTOC Goal Foundation, Going for Goal.
Right.
So when faced with this diagnosis, I had the option to allow it to define me and play it safe, which is what everybody wanted me to do. But I'm wired a little differently. And if I have to be absolutely honest, getting to the start line was a victory for me. And then doing it 1 mile at a time for 26.2 miles and getting to the finish was then a victory. For me, I did not want the cancer diagnosis or my cancer diagnosis. I don't like to use look like my because I don't want to own it.
No, you didn't buy it. You
Right?
own what you buy.
It's not mine. I don't own it. It's not my
You don't
child.
own it. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Right? It's an enemy. I didn't want cancer to define me. So starting that marathon, even though I wasn't able to train, I did 1 4 mile. I completed it in 8 hours. That's grueling, eh? 8 hours. That was, I made that part of my treatment plan. No, I wasn't irresponsible for anyone listening or viewing. The marathon was last week, right? Sunday.
Yeah.
The 18th of January. The marathon challenge is now called. Because we had we had a wheelchair person, we had people who want to ride, so it's now inclusive. So the Friday before and the Monday before, I would have attended my primary physician and the specialist on Friday. So based on the parameters and based on how they were monitoring me all the time, they sort of, I have to choose my words carefully, right? They did not object to me doing it. The only word of caution, very firm caution, strict caution, absolute caution was, and both of them spoke from different, they didn't consult, was that I should listen to my body. This is not a case as in previous years where you adopt the attitude that the mind goes before the body. And when the mind goes, and the Navy SEALs, I think you're in the military, that's their philosophy. When the mind goes, the body is only at 40%, right? Not at this time. So I went into it with that, with the intention to start, and if at any point in time my body didn't feel up to it, I would get into a vehicle, because we do have vehicles. It's not a competitive event. It's about people choosing to do how much they feel they could do, all in support of the youth and young people, in this case, in Trinidad and Tobago, who aspire to achieve the Olympic podium. And so the plan was to start, and if that need be, take a ride, and then come out maybe closer to the finish and just do the last couple of miles. But I think everybody knew, including my wife, that that wasn't going to happen. That I was going to walk every mile.
Just,
it was grueling, I have to say. I felt it physically. Certain things that I would not have felt before. But I'm sure that I had good support. And essentially, I'm not a Liverpool fan, I'm an Arsenal fan. But the Liverpool song, "You Don't Walk Alone," was very important. So I had good support. My sister flew in from New York, Arlene, and she walked with me. I had close friends. I had, as I said, the Cancer Society did a relay. So I had people checking in, but I wasn't, at Life Will Have It, I wasn't. There was someone else who didn't want to be announced, who was also diagnosed. I was diagnosed with cancer around June, July, and that person was diagnosed in February. And they said they wasn't going to do anything like that, but when they saw that I was going to do it, they motivated.
So the question, before I go, there's a nice segue there to that, but Gordon was just clarifying. Gordon Julian, who is a nurse, he says PSA 7 and Flomax, as a nurse, I will inform him to be aggressively seeking other medical opinions. I myself is not comfortable with that approach. That's for the person asking for a friend. So he was referring to the...
So the nurse, I think it's a nurse, the nurse agrees with me, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. And the question is, how do you see this this effort helping, to raise awareness, not just about prostate health, but more about the broader well-being of athletes and sports administrators?
Okay, so it's two different things also, although there's an intersection. Mm-hmm. I believe that the reality is that Caribbean athletes in a Caribbean society will oftentimes struggle to attract and retain the kind of financial support, at least in other countries, who have the same objective, which is going for Olympic gold or an Olympic medal. You can research it, you see where all kinds of countries have a different program. In the Caribbean, because of challenges in our society, you'll find that a lot of times, even the corporate partners, even the governments, sport and striving for Olympic podiums may not necessarily be a priority. It's a wish list, but crime and education and health, business, labor, all those things will be high up the priority list. And as a result of that, a lot of times our athletes struggle. Now you have the percentage that will get a Puma sponsorship deal or an Adidas or Nike. You have those who would go away on US scholarship, but then what happens after? So I believe that initiative that identify specific support for athletes aspiring for Olympic podium that will complement what is available from the various national Olympic committees via Pan Am Sports and the International Olympic Committee Solidarity Program, where the government may have specific support. It's all complementary. I don't think, given the makeup of the economies of the Caribbean societies, any one group, individual, or initiative will provide the kind of depth and breadth and sustainability that athletes who aspire for the pinnacle. Mm-hmm. So that's that aspect. I think there needs to be more programs, more initiatives. You know, in the Caribbean, unlike in developed countries, sorry to use that phrase, philanthropy is not a big thing. So when you look at the US Olympic Committee and all these countries, they have billionaires and millionaires writing checks for the US Olympic Committee, US City Foundation. Mm-hmm. Big businessmen, they will leave, you know, you could Google it, you all know that, you all know that. In terms of prostate cancer, I believe that because a symbol of our machismo and masculinity, besides how many children we have and anyway, how many children we have, is sport. Yeah. We put a lot of identity in sport.
In sport, yeah.
And I believe strongly that we need in the Caribbean more sport people, in this case men, to do like Shaka Islam and Sir Chris Hoy and break the silence. Mm-hmm. Let us work to break the silence. Because if we could save one person, and I wouldn't even say one, but one friend, I had a friend call me, and the call went like this. Exactly like this. Phone ring, I answered, what's up? I say, hey, what's up? I hear you. I say, what? I hear you. I kind of look, I say, what? I hear you. I'm going on screen this week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's one friend. Mm-hmm. Another one called quieter and say, hey, I'm going on screen. And then a 40-year-old who kind of, you know, like I'm his mentor, call me and say, Mr. Lewis, I hear you, you know. I just turned 40. I'm going for my first. I'm going on screen. We, even you, Michael, even you, Lily, this is the thing. We don't understand how powerful and profound our voices can be once we are prepared not to let the ego rule and show some vulnerability and honesty. Because everybody keeping a straight face, right? And everybody living the lie. Because everybody afraid and ashamed to say, hey, are you hurting, you know? Or this is what, and this is what I do. Check it out. Because the studies and the research from the public health experts show that in the Caribbean, the mortality and morbidity rate for Afro-Caribbean males is some of the highest in the world. And this don't only mean those of us who remain in these beautiful Caribbean islands, you know. It means people like yourself in the diaspora too.
Yep, so true.
Once you have the genes, the DNA, once you have that Afro-Caribbean, don't feel because you're in the big cold. No, you may have better options, more expensive.
Yeah.
But if you wait, because you have the same stigma, it's how we socialize, you know.
We socialize.
Yeah.
Right? So true.
Sickness is sickness. Huh?
Sickness, it doesn't change.
We remain at 6 o'clock, even if it's for a couple of months. It's mortifying.
Yep.
The Caribbean male, you know.
So going into the closing there, but Rudian, I don't know if there is a question you want to ask him, because I have something else I want to ask him.
My boy, you're quiet today.
No, because you know you're learning as you go, right? Because like I said, we as the men in our church, the men in our church, we talk about it a lot, and we bring in nurses and we bring in doctors, you know, to encourage our men. Subtly for that, because it's a very important thing.
But we talk about even though we all do that, there's still pushback for men. There's still the pushback.
No, there is not much pushback. What we get is not. Yes, a bit of a pushback in some that we don't get the support. We get a few of the men coming out, but not as much as we would like to. When you have those serious talks, you know, especially when they're with medical stuff, and I think that we want to push for that more. Because that's very important, and just to listen and to get the advice, and even some of the men who have really done it already and said, listen, man, it's not that hard, it's not that, you know, and all these things they're saying, and those who reach 50 and say, listen, there's another one you have to do when you reach 50, and those type of things, you know. A lot of these things is encouraging, and we do get that encouragement. However, we don't get the support of the men coming out as we would like to. When it's something else, we see them, you know, but when it's come to this, we don't. So we were trying to figure out a way of how we can get that. That's why I said I'm pushing for this, man. It's very important for men health. Men health is very important. And when you look at even on television, you don't see much commercial even talking about men health.
You see a lot of women, you know.
Yeah, you see a lot of the women. Yeah, a lot of it on the women. You're not seeing men health commercial that is in the, because one of the things too with us, yes, we know it's important, but out of sight is out of mind. You know, so if we don't push it out there, and we thank you for you coming out and you're speaking, and others like yourself coming out and speaking. Now it's out there, you know, so one of the men could hear it, somebody's going to hear it here, somebody's going to hear it there, and then, like you said, you have 2 or 3 of the people close to you that they call you and say, hey, I'm going to get screened, because you speak out. If you stay silent, it's just 3 lives that, you know, that could have been gone, you know. So certainly, and they have to understand, and we have to understand that there is help, there is a support team, and I don't, and maybe the question is there a cure? That maybe that's a question I'm asking. Is there a cure? Because if there is, then the men should know there is a cure. Early 6 signs, meaning that there is a faster cure, if there is a cure, or a slower process to it, or whichever the case might be. You have heard of women who they go and get checked and they say they have cancer, they have this, they see this, they see this, and then they go back and they say they see nothing because they probably went through the process, they went through what they have to do, and then they check again and there's nothing. So if there is something like again, like it is good for them to understand that hey, if there is some sort of signs, there are things that you can take that can shrink it, that could make it go away, that could keep you live longer. Certainly, I think that that's the key thing.
The only how that is possible is if they go and test.
If they're going to get checked, but what I'm saying that those questions probably lingering in their head that they know, hey, if there is signs, there is things that can be done.
More folks like Brian and others, providing testimonies and things like that.
So they will say yes, there is things that you can do. And on top of only that too, Brian, there are things now men can just take without even having. There are things that men could do right now without before even getting screened. Young men coming up, there are things they can do. And I
hope you're not advocating for bush medicine, though.
No, not necessarily. But I'm just saying there are things I can do, like I said, eating properly, exercising, those things. There are things that can be done now to avoid those type of things. And yes, Brian, listen, you stay healthy, you eat properly, you have you have a good diet, you're almost vegan, you're very close to being vegan. You feel like I'm doing everything, and then bam. So yes, you have to also say that it's not for everybody, but yes, if you still do the same thing, I remember a teacher of mine, a teacher that taught me in school and become a very good friend after, even to this day. He had a heart attack playing basketball. He was very upset because he said, I changed my whole diet. He said, I did everything right and this thing still happened to me. So but he wasn't saying it in a sense where you're just saying it when like still guys still do the right thing. Doesn't mean because I feel within myself maybe I started late, maybe I start doing the things late, so it can be slowly creeping up on me. So those little things like that, we're saying that if we can get those things done, I certainly think we can help many more lives. But I am really advocating to see more men health talk about in the Caribbean, and especially for Grenada. I say it all the time. I want to see more on men health, men health in the Caribbean.
As part of that advocacy, Roger Duncan said we get pushback when we say crap like jab don't do this and that. Maybe if we use the jab to promote men's health, we might get some better traction. What gives you the strength and optimism as you continue this journey, Mr. Lewis?
Beg pardon?
No, I was asking what gives you the strength and the optimism as you continue this journey, and this journey is one of, I would say, advocacy.
In terms of the prostate cancer, I would say God, my wife, my children, and some close friends and my medical team. And a faith that God, you don't ever get more than you can bear, and that every crisis, if you call it that, is an opportunity. And in this case, breaking the silence, as I said, I would have touched base with Shaka, and as I said, the Chris Hoy approach, I think is important, because we can't continue doing the same thing over and over and expecting and we can't continue living in denial. Prostate cancer and male cancer under the rubric is a significant public health concern in the Caribbean, and you don't need to be a sociologist or a social scientist to understand the impact that has and will have, on our society, our communities, and our families. And it is important to get screened. Early detection can save lives, but I think, as was just mentioned, there are a number of things in addition to that. a simple one, as part of the changes that I need to make for my treatment, even though I was a vegetarian, I don't use the microwave again. I steam and steam a lot. Have a lot of soups. As I said, stew. So although I'm a vegetarian, I love my doubles, I love my vegetarian roti, and I love my rice and peas, or as we call it in Trinidad and Tobago, pilau, but without meat. But here what? A pilau even without meat is not a pilau unless
It's not a pillow.
unless it's stew. And you know what stew means? Once you're talking stew, you're talking oil and sugar.
Sugar. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
You know, to your point, if you look at the other thing, barbecue this, even if it's oysters, fried oysters, not oysters, in my case, mushrooms and all of those things. Because if you research, you'll realize that grilling and chars and all charring of food, tests have shown that creates an environment that causes cancer to thrive.
And that, I was saying, and that is, as you see on the monitor there, this is something close to both Grenada and Trinidad. As Lincoln said, we have to go easy on the pig foot, blood pudding, oil bubbles, the pepper pot, and chubby.
Sorrel. I don't know if you all have sorrel. You know, sorrel that acid, and that love sorrel, apple J, big belly solo. Right, the stress, alcohol.
So all of that, Mr. Lewis, how easy or challenging it was for you now to adapt to all that changing lifestyle in terms of eating and all of that?
I thought that being a vegetarian, leaning towards a time vegan, would be sockeye, as they say. But remember, I told you, my diet as a vegetarian would have had a lot of ground provision, dashin, yam, plantain, fruits, mango, the whole fruits. I had to, the choice we would have made, and I say we, all those things that had come out, it was literally a ketogenic, whether you agree or not, right? So that ketogenic means a lot more nuts, beans, green vegetable, raw. So until now, I have to eat, I now eat raw bell pepper, green, raw carrots. I eat tomato like apple, like in okra, raw, cucumber, raw. Let me tell you. You remember
the okra is a hard one. I could do the rest, but the okra hard one.
After a while, you know, everything, no sugar. Everything, sugar.
Sugar free.
Now we're drinking sorrel, which is hibiscus, like a tea.
Like a tea.
Vine tea. Soursop leaf tea. Walnut leaf tea.
All those T&M,
Karaili. Oh my God. Karaili. Ever tried it, Karaili raw? Just cut it in water. So I was saying earlier on as we wrap, the doctor was saying to me that in fighting this, you have to have the same type of discipline you would have had as if you were preparing to play rugby or run a thing or anything, because you have to be disciplined. So I have to get me 8 hours sleep. I'll be open and honest. But if I'm struggling a little bit, I take I've been advised to take melatonin, which is not addictive, to help me sleep, to get in the hours. I have to exercise between 30 minutes and an hour, not heavier use like I used to. Walk and some light weightlifting, because that's an important part of the treatment plan. So you see, exercise, eating properly, getting sleep, drinking water, all the things that. So to answer your question, it requires discipline. I have good days in everything, physically, mentally. Some days I still feel tired. So in the early, that is what started triggering it. I was feeling very tired, getting back pains, loss of appetite, losing a little weight, and that started to trigger the test, right? So now I just have to discipline myself, make sure and slip it in, get in the 8 hours however I could. So it requires some discipline, but at the end of the day, if I don't do that, and I'm not disciplined, then cancer will win the battle.
If the,
That's how, that's the choices before me.
if there is one message you want to leave with our audience today, what would it be, Mr. Lewis?
Go and get screened. Tell your brother, tell your husband, tell your sweet man, tell your cousin, your brother-in-law, your uncle-in-law, your father-in-law, your uncle, your grandfather. Go and get screened. Early detection saves lives. Go and get screened. Today is Saturday. Make an appointment Monday. If you have never been screened and done a PSA in the case of prostate cancer, go Monday, Tuesday latest, and do it. If you have done one before and you haven't done one for the last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and you're over 40 and you are of Afro-Caribbean descent, go Monday morning, Tuesday latest, and get screened.
Yep. And
Certainly, so true.
yeah, and as someone who has always championed, athletes and sport, what keeps you motivated, to keep going, even in the face of personal, adversity?
Because all of us in life have our challenges. And once you understand your why in life and your purpose, as I said in the beginning, sport made a difference in my life. I think I may have said this before, but I remember when I was a teenager, my mother, single parent, came to me one day and said, Brian, you're my eldest. I will always love you. I will always be there for you. But I have my ears to the ground and I've heard you will either be dead very soon or going to jail for a long time. And that is when I decided to take the road less traveled by and by. And sport played an important part, because when I had a chip on my shoulder and the teachers in schools used to say, all the Belmont boys, all they ain't good, all they couldn't be in school, all they will end up not go to jail. Sport, and there were things you couldn't learn. You was allergic to some subjects. You go and you play sports and you're good at that. So it can't be that you're totally done, see, or you totally can't learn, or you totally are good for nothing. And as I said, I didn't have a father, so sport became my surrogate father, because in the 60s, 70s, of course, most of the role models, if you want to call it, I'm wrong, you were male sports people. Yes. You're watching cricket, you know what I mean? So you always saw via sport, whether it's the Olympics, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, cricket in particular back in those days, you saw people who looked like you achieving success and social mobility playing sport.
Yep. Yep.
So I understood deeply the profound power of sport as a universal language. And as I said, I made it the tool and the vehicle to seek to make a positive difference in the lives of youth and young people as it made in my life. And I've always said, and I'll leave at this, I may have said it before, but all children, regardless of where they're from, whether they're rich, they're poor, they're black, they're Indo, they're Chinese, they're from anywhere in the world, all children love to play. And all sport is that some people, some of us, get the opportunity to play and get paid for playing it. But at the end of the day, at its essence, it's still play.
Still play.
It's what we all love. You know, you tell somebody, boy, stop playing the fool.
Yep.
Play is important. Play
Still
is
play.
how we express our deepest emotion outside of love. And that's why I say, and I will continue to repeat, even in terms of exercise, which is a form of play, is important for health. It's important for building community. It's important, a family that not just eats together, a family that plays together.
Stay together.
So, as I was saying, we need to shake off the colonial shackles that sport is only for the elite. You remember back in the day? That's how it was, right? That's what the colonialists bring. And embrace the reality of sport. At the end of the day, even though you don't take it at that level, sport is a 700 billion US global economy. Why are we denying youth and young people in the Caribbean who have the talent for that? Just like they may have the talent for music and art and literature. We have produced Derek Walcott, Vivian Ippols, and others. Why our economies and our governments don't embrace sport and sporting services as an important economic, social transformation driver? We keep talking a lot in sports programs, nothing about everything that's important. We keep talking a lot about the, I make no offense for saying that, what the white people dictating. We just talk more about baseball and NFL than we just talk about things that are indigenous to us. We talk more about hip hop and all them things rather than reggae and soca and calypso.
And still,
Right? We allow people to say things about our heroes across the Caribbean, Usain Bolt, Julian Alfred, Aisley Crawford. We don't. So I'm not saying that sport is a cure-all. I am saying that sport can make a powerful difference in the social, community, economic, health, and against crime in the Caribbean. So, yeah. And still go and get screened. Let's not lose sight of it.
Yeah, that's a nice way to end that program there. Go and get screened.
Go and get screened. Get screened. Get screened.
I want to thank you, Mr. Lewis, for all the work you have been doing, the advocacy, and certainly there is,
I don't see it as work. I see it as service. I see it as giving back. It's an honor and a privilege for me to make a contribution in the betterment of Trinidad and Tobago society and the Caribbean.
Right. And, I'm certain you'll be remembered within the Caribbean sporting community for that level of advocacy, I would say. I want to thank you, though, very much for accepting the invitation, being part. What would be your next activity? I know last Sunday, sorry, was your
For me,
yeah, for you in terms
that
of
won't
your
define me. That cancer won't define me. Carnival, I'm playing mass with the best sailor, the name of the band. Exotic stylist sailors. This year we played Odyssey to Jason Griffith, and I'm playing an individual as I did the last 3 years, Lost in Space.
Lost in Space. Okay.
I'm going to be playing mass. I'm going to be playing carnival.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, once I continue to obey the doctors.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis.
It's always a pleasure having you.
Me.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you very much.
All right, then. Thank you. So that's Mr. Brian Lewis, the former president of the immediate past president, I should say, of the both the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee and the CANOC, the Caribbean National Association of Olympic Committees, Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees, immediate past president. And Mr. Lewis has been on our program, a couple of times to talk about, even when he was the president of CANOC, president of TTOC, various issues as regard to sports. And, one of those, Rudian, as you remember some time ago when he spoke about the whole issue of using sports as a vehicle.
Against crime.
And not just Trinidad, in the Caribbean.
In the Caribbean, yeah.
So he has been, advocating for quite a while, right? But I thought it important to bring him on the program this time around to speak on the whole issue of his diagnosis regarding prostate cancer. And, as rightly said, and we can't hide that, there's generally a taboo among men and society, Caribbean society in particular, regarding, cancer.
Men and health.
Men's health. Yeah, let's say men's health. Not just
men's health.
Men's health.
Men's health, yeah.
As you say, you'll see all sorts of PSAs regarding women and women's health and things like that, and very rare you'll see anything as it relates to men's health. And if you do, probably very rare, right? Very rare you'll see that. And I think him coming out, and rightly so, and he said Shakla Hislop also came out recently, and probably will find him getting more people to come out and speak about it, right? And as he said, just after making that announcement, within, how many, at least 3 that reached out to him, close friends that reached out and say, hey, I heard you and I'm going and get tested, And I think it's a situation to where, even for myself, I can say personally, every year, well, at least twice a year, I go to the doctor for my medical checkups, and I make sure I go through all the various, tests, and things like that. So I take it very seriously, Nigel say, take tested on the prostate and be active. And be active in terms of, the exercise, the and what important he says is the nutrition, balanced diet and things like that. So excellent program from Garden. Julian and Lincoln says, good program, Bass, and thanks and best wishes to Brian for his advocacy. Reminds me of Tony Julian, who went publicly recently with his challenge and another health challenge. Yes, very much remember Tony Julian. Yeah, and he says, Nigel says, it's the same message, shrine awareness. Yeah, men's health. Yeah, very important.
Very important, man.
And hopefully, Rudian, is something at some point we'll probably develop, right? As at some point in time, in terms of a program dealing specifically with men's health, and probably get some of the health, professionals to come in. I'm sort of smiling because there's a commentary, Rudian, but you're afraid of needles, right? Yeah, that's my mom saying I'm afraid of needles. That was one before. She's saying I'm afraid of needles. Nah, that was once before. I still, these days when I go, you know, I ask gladly. I ask any needles, you know, any blood, you know. Yeah. Once upon a time, no, seriously, yeah, I had a talent when it comes to.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Once they pull it, you know, I'll ask, is that necessary? You know, is that?
Certainly, man.
Roger says, I'm now calling on all sporting organizations to promote and advocate for men's health in the various sporting disciplines.
Yeah,
let's
certainly.
start with athletics. Going forward, Intercall should be under a theme designed to focus on various aspects of men's health. Carifta can follow suit. So something like, for example, and he mentioned Intercall. Intercall itself is a big activity.
Yeah.
They should use the opportunity to have some medical experts there. You know, you can have a section there where, you know, you have leaflets on issues regarding testing and men's health in particular, not just cancer, but men's health. And probably the opportunity for some free testing, you know.
Oh, you know, Michael, it's not only that too. It just men checkup. Just check up. Like, you know, I'm following suit in the same thing. It just check up. Yeah, it just
even when the Ministry of Health has these clinics, this public thing, you know, at the trade center, whatever. I understand more women and children will show up rather than men.
Because it's never been pushed for them. Never been pushed. That's what I keep saying. There needs a push for men's health. Need a push.
But here's the other thing about it, and I'm not casting blame on the men.
No.
Most times when you have those clinics, the things that you will see up front will be about pap smear and, you know, these sort of things, right? So men will have this idea. Well, that's not
not for us.
You know, they're catering for women. Because we talk about pap smear and this sort of thing. What's about for the men?
Yeah.
So I think sometimes in the messaging, right?
It's a messaging. Yeah. You have to message it properly.
You can't just blame the men, you know, all the time about that.
The messaging.
It's a messaging, right? Just one program note before we leave, Rudy, and come next Saturday, and I'm telling you now, we will be talking about sports as a vehicle to combat NCDs and anti-social behavior, and also as an avenue for youth and community development. Basically, the societal impact of sport, right? So it's a sort of holistic discussion. Our guest will be Mr. Barry Collymore, big on fitness and, you know, and diet and things like that. So and Barry will be coming to talk to us about that. We'll be having a big discussion, and it's almost like a sort of segue to this, right? The shows how we can use sports as a vehicle to combat the NCDs and antisocial behavior. So, you know, somewhat using sports as a vehicle for things like you know, fighting against crime and violence and sort of violence. And more as an avenue for youth and community development, and, you know, how it impacts society, right? I think it should be a very interesting discussion, and we look forward to your company next Saturday, God's willing, same time. It will be our last program for the month of January. Ooh, the year is gunning.
The year just started and it's almost ended, man. We're getting ready for Christmas.
And normally, the first month is big month, eh? Because you have 4 full weeks inside of January. 4 full weeks is one of the months where you go full voltage, right? And look, we almost finished already, you know.
Almost finished already.
Yeah. But before we go, Rudian, preparing for the big storm.
Yes, I don't know how you guys doing it down there. It's coming. It's coming.
Normally you say the calm before the storm. They're saying it's the cold before the storm.
Well, I think last night is the coldest in a very long time. that we had going into the morning time. And this morning I'm driving in, and it was like minus 23. And that's and they say with the wind chill, it
Yeah.
feel more like minus 30. So it's
Yeah. It felt
yeah,
cold in New York this morning. New York City was like felt like -7. It was actually about
yeah,
9 degrees.
yeah.
Felt like -7, and it will go up to about somewhere in the teens until
Anything, yeah.
and this sort of weather will stay here
Yeah.
for probably the next week.
The
So we
next week,
expect
yeah.
the snow
You
and
guys.
the ice.
Listen, there's a state of emergency in some places already. Food is off the shelf.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Literally, like people are. I watched some grocery store that shelves are empty.
yeah,
It is empty, and but there's a lot of things that's happening. Business is booming in the sense where people buying a lot of electric lawnmower, the electric not lawnmower but the snow blower.
yeah.
So
Well,
so
I think I have
something
a
is
cordless.
sudden because
I do have a
yeah,
cordless. I have a cordless snow plow.
snow plow is because it's going to be needed. It's going to be something like I don't know if I'm leaving my house tomorrow. Um, certainly, and then Monday. Whew,
um,
yeah, it's
right,
going to be rough.
yeah. There's one thing that, and Rudian, as someone who has been involved, well, who is involved in sports, that's something. Clever say we must also be aware of the rubbing, particularly among athletes at the risk of dislodging blood clots, thrombosis. Because
Yeah,
sometimes the I see that a lot in local sports. Guys run onto the field
yeah,
and they either spraying or rubbing, right?
yeah.
Um, I'm wondering
I
sometimes
I
what
think
sort of
I think
medical experience they have. So that's
I
a good
think
point,
in
Rudy.
yeah, I know it's not a good one, especially in the young people today. Using a lot of things, you can see the professional using it.
But
And doing these things that they don't have a clue. And I watch them. Sometimes they get those bands, and I say, "You guys know how to use it? Because you just get it for getting it stick, and they have the rub, and they have this." But I'm saying, like like
but yeah, the other thing, Rudy, that's I always see that happening. They, especially at local football,
yeah,
not when the national team when it's playing, they will have probably a medical doctor or some medical person, that basically knows. But you will see guys running onto the field, and for some reason I don't even know what role they have in the team, but they run onto the field with a spray, right?
yes,
And they're just spraying or they're just rubbing, and you ask yourself, is that is this person a medical expert or someone who was trained to?
we was
I mean,
trained to
because
do
that's
this.
the only thing.
Yeah.
Yes, the footballer got a knock, right? But
Yeah,
I mean, he knows what he's doing. I mean, I don't
yeah.
know. But these guys,
You see that a lot, and like I said, because we are getting to the point of we see what others do, we see the professionals, and we want to mimic what they're doing. And I think that is the problem. It's even go with the shoes and the gears. We see them with it, so it's like we want what they have. When something cheaper could do the exact same job. It's like, do I need to buy a $100 hammer when there is a one for $50 that could do the exact same job? I mean, I'm just saying, So sometimes we have to educate the young people, especially on the young people side. Like to talk about the local side too. Especially on that side, they are doing things with this rubbing and doing
yeah,
stuff that they don't have a clue what it is. So yeah.
yeah. Roger says the month of January has 37 days. It commences December 26th. So that's right after Boxing Day,
After
right?
Christmas, right after
Right,
Christmas,
yeah, right after Christmas. Start of
right after Christmas, yeah.
Boxing Day is the start of January.
It's the start of January, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So thank you very much, Rudy, and always a
It's
pleasure.
always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Looking forward to next week's show. It's going to be a good one,
Yeah.
especially anything that comes with information, especially like today. It's very important. Yeah.
Take that one before you go, Rudy.
Uh,
Yeah, you ask yourself about those things.
yeah, ask yourself what
Uh,
is things.
yeah. All right then. Thank you very much, Rudy.
All right, have a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, Rudy and Sylvan, co-hosts in Toronto, and just some comments there. They call it a bruise, very risky. I know, went through that, and it was the lack of rubbing that saved my life. Okay, the lack of rubbing. So if they had rubbed it, then you probably would have been in problems. And that's it. I always ask the question. They're running onto the field. Do they know what they're doing? I mean, yes, the referee summoned, medical assistance or whatever, and this guy will run onto the field with a slipper, whatever it is, whatever, and with a spray in his hand. And the first thing they will do is just spray it, right? You know, what assessment done to determine, the injury, or whether it is an injury that the player should be off. And that's why sometimes, Cleve and Toro and Roger and others, that we have these players, and particularly I'm using football, right? We see it in track and field as well, in school sports and things, but let's look at football. And we realize that these guys sometimes don't move on to the bigger leagues, national, or even further than that, because of these things. They have this injury, and it was never really treated, because all they did is someone comes, spray on, relief, and then the person goes about whatever it is for a while, go to work the next day, 3 in the afternoon or whatever, or play the game the next few days or whatever. No treatment or anything like that. No advice, like sought some medical advice to check on this injury. Or when they do, it's too late, and that's the problem. I saw goalkeepers get knocked out and man run onto the field and give the keeper 2 slaps to help him recover. Yeah, and that's a problem, and it's sad, but that's what happens sometimes, and and unfortunately they don't seek the proper advice, medical or otherwise, and for some reason, it's a recurrent injury that will last for them for a while. Before I go, we must say congratulations to Oreo Cherubin. Well, her correct name is Oriola Cherubin. We call her Ori Cherubin, the former national swimmer. And as I wrote, Ori won. She was just not the flag bearer for Grenada in terms of swimming for a while, but she made her splash also in the OECS as a multiple gold medalist, Carifta swimmer, gold medalist, CISC, yes, Caribbean Island, Inter-Island Swimming Championships, yes, Sisican, that Central American, won gold medals there as well. Participating in Commonwealth Games, World Aquatics, and also the Olympic Games. Tori said, remember, she has wharf ties. Well, she is the daughter of Pamela Cherubin, and Pamela has been involved in swimming in particular, administratively, for quite a while, and also her father is George Porgy Cherubin, another one who has been involved in sports for quite a while. That's where Tori would probably want to say the wharf ties, and no doubt brings quite a bit to to Grenada. And it's interesting to get to know the journey of Ori. When Ori, and one of the things that her mom said to me is that she always tried to encourage others that, listen, it's important that you expose your kids to various sporting disciplines at an early age, right? So it wasn't just swimming for Ori. She excelled in swimming, but she also participated in netball. She did cycling, she played football, and she was also involved in dancing with Keith Williams in at the convent, and Ori did 12 subjects, CXC. I have to give that, she probably might not want me to repeat that, but she got 11 ones and a 2, and she cried. Her mom says she cried. Many kids would be happy with that. And one of the subjects basically that she got a 1 in, I was told, is that she never attended classes. She just had the book and studied from the book. And it shows you a lot about aptitude and, dedication and discipline, so many qualities, And yes, she, I used to call Ori my, my little darling when we go out to, to the various meets and things, because she was so disciplined. And I used her many times as a sort of, what I should say, example for other sportsmen and sportswomen, in terms of her discipline, how she portray herself. You never had this thing about, any controversy in terms of Ori and things like that. So I was so happy when she left Grenada, because that was my concern, the opportunities. And, she spent 1 semester at the TMR Show Community College, 1, and then moved out. She said she hooked up with her aunt and uncle in Pennsylvania, moved into the Y, swam at the Y, and did some credits, and then the opportunities came. She chose Fairleigh University. She had other universities, and by the way, other big name, as they call it, big name university, and she chose that one, and she was to the did a first degree, then went on to a master's, and even before 30, she is Dr. Ori Cherubin, yeah, and in a very special area, analytical chemistry. Yeah, man. That's a young scientist in the making, boy. Congratulations to Ori, Dr. Ori, I should say, doctor, yes, and to her other siblings and to her parents, Quadri Cherubin, Pamela Cherubin. Thank you very much. Yeah, I had to push that part in because I think it's big, and I think something like that we can use to inspire more of a young sportsmen and sportswomen about the opportunities that are available, right, through sports, right? And and people may have thought whether it's Porgy or Pamela, the family or the government, but it was her being on scholarships, her showing not just her ability in the pool, because she has always been a talented girl, but her academics as well, her dedication, her commitment to education, and balancing it as well. Very important. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you very much. Before we move on, I know, Toro, I know you would like me to mention that. Definitely, yeah. Despite what? Congratulations to the Presentation Brothers College. It appears that they are doing pretty well in cricket and basketball. They have had some very convincing victories. That's the PBC. Very convincing victories over the past past week or so. And I say convincing because they had a big victory over the GBSS. They had in basketball, and they did well in cricket. They had a big victory over the Happy Hill Secondary School in cricket. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. So they're doing pretty well, and I want to congratulate the PBC, the Presentation Brothers College, or Boys College, I think it's Brothers, right? For their yeah, for the outstanding performances thus far in basketball and cricket in particular. However, as some would say, the real test comes around in March. The real test comes around in March when they come up against the big boys for Intercall 2026. Hopefully, they can probably transition into a competitive team, because over the past few years, by the way, I think we have seen some strength in the PBC in particular, particularly from the sub-junior and junior. So I think some of them should be into the senior. Let's see if they can probably translate that into some additional points and be a rival to the perennial St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School, Grenada Boys Secondary School, McDonald College, and others. But let's see. They will have to dance in the big party come March, right? Let them win now, because it's fifth. They're coming into call. Toro, I don't know if you'll have lots of friends after that, but let's see. It will be a challenge come March, when Intercall comes around. Definitely we're looking forward to the Intercall 2026, March 17 to the 19. In a few days, we'll be saying come next month, Intercall 2026. And shortly after that, will be followed by the Curve to Games, April 4th to the 6th. Right, folks, looking forward to your company come next Saturday, God's willing, same time. That will be 12 o'clock Eastern time, 1 o'clock Eastern Caribbean time. Until then, do have yourself a pleasant weekend.